I didn't always have this strange allergy. Like many people with allergies, I didn't develop it until later. I started having reactions when I was around 10 or 11. My mom had asked me to do the dishes, which I hated doing the most. Halfway through the pile of dirty dishes, my hands and arms started itching uncontrollably all the way up to my elbows. Before I continue with my story, make sure to subscribe to our channel, or your crush will embarrass you in front of everyone. I told my mom, but she thought I was just making it up to get out of doing the dishes. Boy, did she feel bad. When I finished the dishes, my hands and arms were entirely bright red and hot to the touch. My mom rushed me to the emergency room, where they took me immediately at the sight of how severe my reaction was. The doctor asked me if I had been exposed to anything new, and my mom, confused, answered it was the same dish soap she always bought. He gave me a prescription for a cream that would help clear up the reaction and stop the itching. He said to pay close attention to the products I used on my skin and any reactions I might have for the next few weeks. It certainly didn't take that long to figure it out, though. After having the same scary reaction after my morning showers, each time I washed my hands after using the bathroom and before I ate, and when I did the dishes, even when I was using different soaps. When my mom and I went back to the doctor for a follow-up appointment, he agreed. I was clearly allergic to soap. Later, we learned it wasn't all soap, thankfully. But since we didn't know what chemical in particular in common soaps was causing my problem, I had to switch to all-natural soaps that were chemical-free. As I got older, my allergy got worse. I couldn't touch anyone who had recently used soaps with chemicals or who had any residue of it on their hands. It was a nightmare. School was already hard enough. Dating was going to be impossible. I went from just being the weird girl carrying her own soap with her everywhere to being the freak that wore gloves and long sleeves all the time. When I went on my first date, I wore my gloves and long sleeves, feeling like a freak. But my date didn't seem to care. Either that or he pretended not to notice. He planned the whole thing. He took me to the movies, which was such a relief as no one could stare at me, and bought us popcorn, candy, and soda, letting me choose all the flavors. I had never felt so special. We saw a romantic comedy, and I was having the time of my life. About halfway through the movie, he leaned in to kiss me. My heart started pounding hard with excitement. That was short-lived, unfortunately, because the second he kissed me, my face and throat started swelling up. I couldn't breathe, and everything started to go dark. The last thing I heard was my date crying out for help in the movie theater. I woke up a little later in an ambulance after they had given me epinephrine, a medicine used to treat severe allergic reactions. The EMTs in the ambulance told me that I was lucky to be alive. They said I had gone into anaphylactic shock and that I needed to be more careful to avoid my allergens. I couldn't believe it. Nothing like this had ever happened to me before. My head was filled with a million questions. What happened to my date? Was he freaking out? Did he think he killed me? What was going to happen to me? How was I possibly going to live my life if this was my new reality? I went home from the hospital later that night with a prescription for EpiPens. The doctor told me to make sure I had at least 2 on me at all times, that it could save my life. My mom requested an extra set of EpiPens given the severity of my condition, and our insurance approved it. I couldn't believe that I'd have to carry these things and rely on my ability or someone in my vicinity's ability to stab me with them to save my life. After about a month, the shock of my worsening allergy wore off, and it became my new normal. I went back to school every day wearing my proper protection and carrying my EpiPens, for which there were extra backups stored in the nurse's office. The rest of high school was relatively smooth sailing for me. I only had to use an EpiPen twice in the whole 3 years I had left. Going to college has been a bit different for me, and it's taken a lot of adjustment. Suddenly, I was responsible for purchasing all my products. I didn't have my mom around to double-check all the ingredients for me. She tried to teach me what to look for, but it got so complicated. I kept forgetting. She eventually just made me a list of what products I should buy, and I felt hopeless. I struggled to even find those in stores. Every time I shopped, I had to spend the entire time on the phone with my mom. I tried dating again in college, and it was certainly difficult. I wanted to try something like the school gatherings or speed dating, but I don't exactly look very approachable with all my skin covered. Finally, I confided in my roommate Ellie, and she had a ton of helpful suggestions for me. We talked about it all night and have since been really close friends. Her first suggestion, since it was winter at the time, was to try going to a football game with her. She said she would go tailgating before, so there were plenty of opportunities to meet people, and everything was outside. so everyone was wearing long sleeves, gloves, and scarves. I'd fit right in. I thought this was the best idea. I couldn't wait until that Friday's football game. Ellie said she would help me pick out the cutest outfit and even offered to let me borrow some of her team gear. I had to turn her down, though, because I didn't know what was in her detergent. When Friday finally came, we both skipped our morning classes and spent the whole morning getting ready. Ellie said that tailgating could start as early as 9 in the morning. But if we went at around noon, we'd be sure to arrive when everything was in full swing. She showed me videos online to show me how to fix my hair and makeup, so she didn't have to risk touching me. She helped me pick out the perfect outfit and told me the necessary items I'd want to bring, reminding me to grab my soap or hand sanitizer, as we'd be there a long time, so I'd likely have to use the bathroom. When we got to the parking lot, I saw more trucks than I've ever seen in my life in one place. There were tents, grills, and people everywhere, and not a soul stared at me for my long sleeves and gloves. Ellie took me over to the tent with her friends. They had a grill and more food than I could have imagined being brought to a parking lot. She introduced me to a cute guy named John. He and I really hit it off and spent all of the time leading up to the game together. He asked me to sit with him during the game, and Ellie said she didn't mind. I couldn't believe my luck. I was worried he might try to kiss me, though, but I secretly wanted him to. About halfway through the game, I started to get really cold. He offered to snuggle me to keep me warm. I wanted it so badly and racked my brain with a way I could. Finally, it hit me. I put my scarf up between my coat and my hat, which was already covering the entirety of my ears. I held my breath as I leaned into the invitation, not 100% sure if my idea would work. But it did. I was fine. John and I dated for a little longer, but when he found out about my allergy, he said it was too much. He didn't want to use a specific type of soap or spend his time worrying about whether or not he might kill me. He said it was too much responsibility and didn't want to be liable. I understood, but it hurt me deeply. Ellie said that I shouldn't worry about it. If that was the way he felt, he didn't deserve me, and I was better off without him. But I'd seen enough romantic comedies to know that that's just what people say when you're dumped. Ellie's next suggestion was to try a dating app. She said I could even add a specification about not minding coping with allergies. I had no idea you could be specific about such a thing on an app like that. I decided to give it a shot. She helped me get my profile together and gave me tips for ways to sell myself and attract the right type of person to my profile. I received my first message from a guy named Eric, and we planned a date. This time, I decided to lead with my allergy. If he couldn't deal with it, I didn't need to waste any more of my time with him. Much to my surprise, Eric didn't mind at all. He quickly replied, "That's terrible. Do I need to switch my soaps or detergents before we meet up?" I couldn't believe it. I was so glad Ellie had this terrific idea. I let Eric know my specifications, and he promised to take extra special care the day of our date. About 2 hours before my date, Eric sent me an urgent message. I was so scared he was canceling, but he wasn't. "I'm worried about your allergy, and I want to make sure you're completely comfortable. Would you rather change our meetup location to somewhere you feel is safer for you?" I couldn't believe what I just read. What a terrific guy. I quickly responded that was such a considerate thought and invited him over to my room. I informed Ellie so she could be close by in case anything went wrong. After all, I was meeting someone I had met online for the first time. That's pretty risky. Ellie helped me get ready and helped to create our room look date-ready. We looked online for some fun suggestions and created the perfect scene. We made a fort out of our sheets, put our mattresses on the floor with tons of pillows, covered in blankets, all of course washed with my special detergent, and set up Netflix on the TV. Before she left, Ellie had the terrific idea of hanging her string lights around the room for some nice ambiance. "And remember," Ellie said, "if you need anything or anything goes wrong, I'm just down the hall in the common room." Eric arrived right on time, and he looked even more handsome than the photo he sent me. He had brought me flowers and cookies. We ordered pizza and watched Netflix for the next 3 hours. At 11 o'clock, Ellie came back in and woke us up. We had fallen asleep. It was the perfect night, and I was pretty sure that I was already falling in love. That night, Ellie and I talked about the date until 2 or 3 in the morning. I was so excited, and she was so happy for me. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Eric. "Had a great time last night. Let's do it again soon. You free tomorrow?" Smiley face. Ellie and I squealed with excitement after we read it. I asked him what he had in mind, and he offered to make me a full dinner and bring it to my dorm so I could still be safe. Ellie and I spent the rest of the day shopping to find me the perfect outfit. I was so happy and excited to see Eric again. Ellie recommended I choose something that looked cute while also being comfortable, since we'd likely be sitting on the floor again. We picked out some cute floral leggings and a low-cut, flowy top, and Ellie made some recommendations for how I should wear my hair and makeup. Ellie offered to set up the room for me while I got ready, which really helped me out. While I fixed my hair, though, I received a text that shocked me. "Amelia, what you doing tonight?" John had texted. "What does that loser want?" Ellie asked when I told her who had texted. I showed her the message. "I'll handle this," Ellie said, and she snapped the phone from my hand. She furiously typed as I waited, impatiently. Finally, she handed me back my phone. I looked to see what she had typed. "Not interested, leave me alone, loser," and sent it. "What, do you care?" she asked when I confronted her about it. "You're not going to talk to him again. Look how great a guy you've got now. You don't need him." I realized pretty quickly that she was right. He did deserve that rude response. And what did I care after all? I didn't want to see him ever again. Ellie went to a friend's room this time while Eric was over, since we knew we could trust him. He showed up with a 3-course meal he'd cooked for us and put it in containers. It was the most delicious pasta I had ever had. We spent the night talking, playing card games, and talking. Towards the end of the day, someone knocked on the door. I couldn't imagine who it could possibly be. I opened the door to find John on the other side. I couldn't believe my eyes. How did he find me? He had never been here before. He got angry when he saw Eric behind me and started yelling and acting crazy. Eric looked at me for answers. After seeing the shock and horror on my face, he leapt into action. He insisted that John should leave, or he would make him leave. They yelled at each other for a few minutes, but after threatening to call the police, John left. I hugged Eric and thanked him, and I knew that finally I have someone who cares about me and loves me despite having a weird allergy. I didn't always have this strange allergy. Like many people with allergies, I didn't develop it until later. I started having reactions when I was around 10 or 11. My mom had asked me to do the dishes, which I hated doing the most. Halfway through the pile of dirty dishes, my hands and arms started itching uncontrollably all the way up to my elbows. Before I continue with my story, make sure to subscribe to our channel, or your crush will embarrass you in front of everyone. I told my mom, but she thought I was just making it up to get out of doing the dishes. Boy, did she feel bad. When I finished the dishes, my hands and arms were entirely bright red and hot to the touch. My mom rushed me to the emergency room, where they took me immediately at the sight of how severe my reaction was. The doctor asked me if I had been exposed to anything new, and my mom, confused, answered it was the same dish soap she always bought. He gave me a prescription for a cream that would help clear up the reaction and stop the itching. He said to pay close attention to the products I used on my skin and any reactions I might have for the next few weeks. It certainly didn't take that long to figure it out, though. After having the same scary reaction after my morning showers, each time I washed my hands after using the bathroom and before I ate, and when I did the dishes, even when I was using different soaps. When my mom and I went back to the doctor for a follow-up appointment, he agreed. I was clearly allergic to soap. Later, we learned it wasn't all soap, thankfully. But since we didn't know what chemical in particular in common soaps was causing my problem, I had to switch to all-natural soaps that were chemical-free. As I got older, my allergy got worse. I couldn't touch anyone who had recently used soaps with chemicals or who had any residue of it on their hands. It was a nightmare. School was already hard enough. Dating was going to be impossible. I went from just being the weird girl carrying her own soap with her everywhere to being the freak that wore gloves and long sleeves all the time. When I went on my first date, I wore my gloves